Stop wasting your 20s. The truth: nobody told you your 20s are the most misunderstood decade of your life. Everyone tells you this is the time to enjoy yourself, live a little, don't worry, you're still young. And while there's truth in enjoying the moment, there is also a truth most people never hear, a truth that shapes your 30s, 40s, and the rest of your life. The truth is simple: your 20s are not a waiting room for adulthood. They are the foundation of the life you are about to build. Most people waste their 20s because they think the consequences are far away. They believe they have time. They believe the future is something they'll figure out later. They think their habits don't matter yet, their decisions don't matter yet, their discipline doesn't matter yet. But the harsh reality is this: your 20s create the blueprint for your entire future, and most people don't realize it until it's too late. The truth nobody told you is that life doesn't suddenly start at 30. Your income doesn't magically rise. Your habits don't automatically improve. Your confidence doesn't suddenly appear. Your discipline doesn't switch on. Who you are at 30 is simply the result of who you decided to be in your 20s. People who succeed in their 30s aren't lucky, they're prepared. People who struggle in their 30s aren't cursed, they're living the consequences of drifting through their 20s without intention. Your 20s are the decade where you choose your trajectory. Every small decision pushes you upward or pulls you downward. Every habit you form becomes harder to change later. Every skill you learn sets you apart. Every hour you waste compounds into years you can't get back. Most people only realize the importance of their 20s when they hit their first real struggles: the debt, the lack of direction, the career regrets, the lost time, the missed opportunities, the addiction to comfort, the fear of starting over. The things that seemed harmless at 22 suddenly become heavy at 28. The decisions made without thinking become the challenges that define your adulthood. But the people who rise in their 20s, the ones who build momentum early, understand something most never do: every day in your 20s counts more than you think. No one told you how quickly your 20s pass. No one explained how fast time moves when you're not paying attention. No one warned you how easy it is to drift, to procrastinate, to compare, to waste precious years thinking you have more time than you actually do. Too many people wake up one day realizing they are 28, 29, 30, and they feel behind. Not because they lack potential, but because they never built direction. They never built discipline. They never built themselves. Your 20s are the decade of becoming. You are building the mind, the body, the habits, the discipline, the relationships, the skills, and the future that the rest of your life will depend on. And the truth is, the world does not wait for you to figure it out. This decade is your advantage. It's your time to make mistakes, but also your time to build momentum. It's your time to explore, but also your time to plant seeds. It's your time to experiment, but also your time to commit to self-growth. The world won't tell you this because the world benefits when you stay average, distracted, unfocused, and emotionally dependent. But here's the truth nobody told you: if you waste your 20s, you spend your 30s fixing what you broke. If you use your 20s well, you spend your 30s leveraging what you built. Your 20s are not about having everything figured out. They're about doing the things that future you will thank you for: learning discipline, learning emotional control, learning focus, learning hard skills, learning how to think, learning how to build, learning how to choose the right people. While most people use their 20s to escape discomfort, the successful ones use their 20s to embrace discomfort. They push through awkwardness. They push through uncertainty. They push through fear. They choose growth over comfort, responsibility over excuses, and discipline over distraction. This decade shapes your identity. It shapes your confidence. It shapes your network. It shapes your work ethic. And once these things are shaped, they become incredibly difficult to change. But here's the good news, and it's the part most people never hear: your 20s are also the decade of unlimited opportunity. You have time, yes, but only if you use it intentionally. You have energy, yes, but only if you direct it wisely. You have potential, yes, but only if you develop it. This decade is your chance to separate yourself from everyone else. While others are drifting, you can be building. While others are wasting time, you can be investing it. While others depend on comfort, you can develop resilience. While others chase validation, you can chase growth. Your 20s can be the decade where you rise. Or the decade where you fall asleep at the wheel. The truth nobody told you is that the decision is entirely yours. And what you do now will echo for the rest of your life. Most people don't fail in their 20s because they lack talent. They fail because they lack direction. They drift from job to job, hobby to hobby, relationship to relationship, never giving anything enough time to compound. They live reactively, responding to whatever life throws at them, instead of intentionally designing the life they want. And because the world constantly tells them, "You're still young," they never feel the urgency to take control. But here's the truth almost no one will tell you: your 20s are the decade where you set the standards for your entire life. The beliefs you accept now, the habits you build now, the discipline you develop now, these become the default patterns you carry into your 30s, 40s, and beyond. And once a pattern becomes your identity, it becomes incredibly difficult to change. This is why you must be brutally honest with yourself in your 20s. Are you building discipline or avoiding it? Are you building habits or breaking them? Are you building confidence or destroying it? Are you building direction or drifting without purpose? The decisions you make now matter far more than you realize. One of the biggest lies society tells young people is that you have time. Yes, you do have time, but not as much as you think. Time is only valuable if you use it. Time is only powerful if you invest it. If you throw it away, it becomes your enemy instead of your advantage. Most 20-year-olds don't feel urgency because the consequences of their actions are delayed. You can eat badly in your 20s and still feel fine. You can procrastinate in your 20s and still get by. You can waste money in your 20s and still survive. You can jump from job to job and still feel hopeful. You can skip building skills, skip reading, skip discipline, and it doesn't destroy you immediately. But then something hits. You turn 28. Or 29. The consequences arrive all at once. The clarity hits you like a train. Suddenly, the lifestyle you coasted through becomes the cage you feel stuck in. No one told you that your 20s are a momentum decade. You are either building momentum or losing it. You are either compounding progress or compounding regret. This is why so many people hit their late 20s in panic, because they spent years drifting, thinking time was on their side. And now they realize time was slipping through their fingers like sand. But here is what successful people do differently in their 20s: they use this decade to build, not escape. They use this decade to prepare, not procrastinate. They use this decade to transform, not numb themselves with distractions. While everyone else is living for the weekend, they are setting up their future. While everyone else is chasing approval, they are chasing growth. While everyone else is blaming circumstances, they are taking responsibility. And here is a truth that hits hard: your 20s are the easiest time to change your life. You have more flexibility, more time, more energy, more freedom. And fewer obligations than you will ever have again. If you waste this window, you will spend the rest of your life wishing you could get it back. Your 20s are the decade where you learn who you are without being defined by your past and before being limited by your responsibilities. This decade is your training ground, the place where you build the version of yourself you will carry into adulthood. But that means you must do the uncomfortable things others avoid. You must learn self-control when it's easier to surrender to impulses. You must learn discipline when it's easier to be lazy. You must learn focus when it's easier to be distracted. You must learn responsibility when it's easier to blame others. You must learn patience when it's easier to chase instant gratification. These skills are not forced on you in your 20s, they are chosen. And the ones who choose them become unstoppable later in life. But there's one more truth no one tells you: your 20s will expose you to people who will shape or break your future. Your friends. Your relationships. Your environment. Your influences. Your social circle. These become mirrors that reflect the life you will live. If your circle is lost, you will stay lost. If your circle is lazy, you will become lazy. If your circle is negative, you will absorb negativity. If your circle is unfocused, your life will become unstructured. But if your circle is driven, you become driven. If your circle is disciplined, you step up. If your circle is ambitious, you start aiming higher. If your circle is intentional, you become intentional. Your 20s are the decade where you must make the difficult choice to outgrow the people who refuse to grow. It will feel uncomfortable. But it will also be the moment you begin building a life with purpose. And here's the final truth most people never tell you: your 20s are not about knowing everything, they are about becoming someone who can handle anything. You don't need all the answers. You don't need the perfect plan. You just need to start building yourself, your discipline, your habits, your skills, your mindset, your character. Because the version of you that enters your 30s will determine every chapter that follows. Your 20s aren't the decade to waste. They are the decade to wake up. If you really want to understand why your 20s matter so much, you have to understand one thing: compounding doesn't just apply to money, it applies to your entire life. Your habits compound. Your skills compound. Your choices compound. Your relationships compound. Your discipline compounds. And your mistakes compound too. Most people enter their 20s thinking they have a lot of time. And technically, they do, but only if they use it correctly. Time is a tool or a trap. If you use your 20s intentionally, time becomes your greatest advantage. If you waste them, time becomes your biggest enemy. Here's what nobody tells you: the gap between people who take their 20s seriously and people who don't becomes impossible to close later. While one person is learning, growing, practicing, failing, adjusting, the other is drifting, scrolling, procrastinating, surviving. And the difference between them widens year after year. Until they are living two completely different lives. Success doesn't happen suddenly. Failure doesn't happen suddenly. Both happen gradually, silently, through daily habits. And your 20s are where those habits are formed. This is why intentionality is so important. You don't need to have your dream career by 25. You don't need to have your life perfectly figured out. But you do need to be actively building yourself. Because who you become in your 20s determines what opportunities you can access in your 30s. Your 20s are not about perfection, they are about direction. Not about knowing the full map, just choosing the right road. Every skill you learn opens a door. Every book you read sharpens your mind. Every challenging job builds resilience. Every disciplined day strengthens your identity. Every environment you choose shapes your future self. But here's a truth many young adults ignore: the world will not reward you for potential, only for results. Potential doesn't pay bills. Potential doesn't build wealth. Potential doesn't attract opportunities. Potential is only valuable when it becomes action. And the only decade where you can convert potential into power the fastest is your 20s. This is why discipline matters more than anything else in this phase of your life. When you build discipline early, your future becomes easier. When you avoid discipline early, your future becomes harder. Most people in their 20s allow emotions to run their life. I don't feel like working. I don't feel like learning. I don't feel like saving money. I don't feel like improving. I don't feel like trying. I don't feel like being uncomfortable. But here's the truth, your feelings are temporary. Your habits are permanent. Your feelings change daily. Your future is built daily. Millionaires, high performers, successful professionals, they don't succeed because they always feel motivated. They succeed because they don't rely on feelings at all. They rely on commitment. They rely on systems. They rely on identity. They rely on action. Your 20s are the time to kill the habit of emotional decision-making because it will destroy your life if you carry it forward. Think about your finances, your health, your mindset, your relationships, your work ethic. If you approach any of these with "I'll do it later," you will eventually reach a point where you no longer have the energy, time, or freedom to fix the damage. The habits you neglect now become the crises you face later. But here's the good news, and it's powerful. Your 20s are the one decade where small improvements create massive results. Small savings turn into future wealth. Small workouts turn into lifelong strength. Small habits turn into major identity shifts. Small decisions turn into long-term advantages. But the opposite is also true. Small distractions turn into addiction. Small procrastinations turn into lost years. Small financial mistakes turn into heavy burdens. Small emotional decisions turn into broken patterns. Your life is always moving in a direction, the question is whether you're steering it or just sitting in the passenger seat. And here's the part almost everyone gets wrong, your 20s are not the decade to seek validation. They're the decade to seek mastery. Everyone wants to look successful in their 20s, nice outfits, nice phone, nice lifestyle, nice social media presence. But the ones who actually become successful in their 30s are the ones who spent their 20s mastering things others ignore: mindset, discipline, skills, focus, emotional control, financial intelligence, consistency. Your 20s are the time to build the future version of you, the version that can handle pressure, solve problems, create opportunities, and lead a meaningful life. While others chase approval, you can chase improvement. While others chase fun, you can chase potential. While others chase comfort, you can chase capability. And here's the deepest truth of all, the one almost no one will tell you: your 20s are not supposed to be easy. They are supposed to challenge you. They are supposed to stretch you. They are supposed to break your old identity. They are supposed to expose your weaknesses. They are supposed to force you to grow. This is the decade of building, not resting. This is the decade of learning, not settling. This is the decade of striving, not drifting. If your 20s feel hard, that's good, it means you're growing. If your 20s feel uncomfortable, that's good, it means you're evolving. If your 20s feel uncertain, that's good, it means you're in the right place. Because your 20s aren't about having all the answers. They're about becoming the person who can find the answers. Your 20s are the decade where the world tests you, shapes you, challenges you, and exposes you to the reality of who you are without the structure you had growing up. For the first time in your life, there are no teachers guiding you, no parents organizing your schedule, no fixed routine telling you what to do next. You're suddenly responsible for everything: your time, your habits, your money, your decisions, your relationships, your direction. This freedom is powerful. But freedom without discipline becomes self-destruction. Most people collapse under this freedom because no one trained them to manage it. So they drift. They let their emotions control them. They wait for motivation. They look for shortcuts. They seek comfort. And slowly, without realizing it, they waste the most transformative decade of their life. But the truth is, your 20s are not the time to drift. They're the time to design. Designing your identity. Designing your habits. Designing your future. Designing your standards. Because the standards you set in your 20s will either build a life you love or trap you in a life you want to escape. This is why you must pay attention to the habits you are building now. If you sleep late every night, it becomes your lifestyle. If you procrastinate every task, it becomes your default. If you spend money impulsively, it becomes your normal. If you avoid discomfort, it becomes your pattern. If you chase short-term pleasure, it becomes your identity. And once habits become identity, they become incredibly difficult to break. But the reverse is also true. If you develop discipline early, it becomes your strength. If you learn consistency early, it becomes your superpower. If you build skills early, they compound for decades. If you practice emotional control early, it becomes your advantage. If you build confidence early, it becomes your foundation. Your 20s are the decade where the work feels invisible, but the results become undeniable later. No one sees the progress you're making. No one claps for the sacrifices you're making. No one praises you for the nights you stay in to work. No one congratulates you for choosing discipline instead of comfort. But those silent decisions determine everything. The truth nobody tells you is this: your 20s are not about proving yourself to the world, they are about proving yourself to yourself. Because if you can build discipline, confidence, and direction now, the world becomes much easier to navigate later. But here's another truth most people ignore: your 20s are the decade where bad habits are easiest to form and hardest to notice. Partying every weekend feels normal. Wasting money feels harmless. Sleeping late feels fun. Skipping workouts feels justified. Switching jobs constantly feels adventurous. Dating without intention feels exciting. But every habit has a cost. Every habit shapes you. Every habit becomes part of your future. And eventually, you wake up in your late 20s realizing that you've built a life based on reactions instead of intentions. You've built patterns instead of purpose. You've built comfort instead of capability. But here's the good news, and it's important: your 20s are also the most forgiving decade. You can change direction fast. You can rebuild fast. You can learn fast. You can fail fast. You can grow fast. You can transform fast. Your 20s give you room to make mistakes as long as you learn and evolve. The problem is not making mistakes. The problem is making the same mistakes again and again until you can't escape them. Your 20s are the time to experiment with your path, but not your character. Your path can change. Your career can change. Your relationships can change. Your dreams can change. But your character must grow. Your habits must strengthen. Your mindset must evolve. Your discipline must solidify. This is what sets you apart. Another truth no one tells you is that your 20s will force you to outgrow people. And this will be one of the hardest parts of your journey. Some friends won't understand your growth. Some relationships won't survive your ambition. Some people will get uncomfortable with your discipline. Some will resent your progress. Not everyone in your 20s is meant to follow you into your 30s. Some people were only meant for a chapter, not your whole story. You don't need people who hold you back. You need people who challenge you. You need people who inspire you. You need people who make you better. You need people who remind you of your potential, not your past. Your 20s are the time to build a circle that elevates you, not one that drains you. And finally, the truth nobody told you, the one that hits hardest: if you don't take your 20s seriously, life will force you to take your 30s seriously. The choices you avoid now become the responsibilities you can't escape later. The habits you ignore now become the problems you're forced to fix later. The skills you don't learn now become the opportunities you never receive later. Your 20s are not a decade to waste. They are a decade to invest. Invest in yourself. Invest in your mind. Invest in your habits. Invest in your skills. Invest in your discipline. Invest in your future. Because these investments compound, and the compounding becomes visible later in life when most people are still trying to figure out what went wrong. Your 20s are the greatest advantage you will ever have, but only if you use them with intention, purpose, and discipline. There is a point in your 20s when everything begins to make sense, when you finally realize why some people rise while others stay stuck. It's not luck. It's not fate. It's not privilege. It's not timing. It's intentionality. The people who win in life are not always the smartest or the strongest. They are the ones who woke up in their 20s and said, "I refuse to waste this decade. I refuse to drift. I refuse to let my future be shaped by laziness, fear, or comfort." Your 20s are the decade where you decide who you will become. Not who you pretend to be. Not who people expect you to be. But who you truly are when no one is watching. When no one is cheering. When no one is validating you. It is the decade where you decide whether your future will be something you create or something you settle for. And this truth hits hard. Your 20s are the last decade where you can build the life you want before life starts being defined by the consequences of your choices. The truth nobody told you is that adulthood doesn't suddenly begin at 30. Adulthood begins the day you realize your future is in your hands, and that no one is coming to save you. Not your parents. Not your boss. Not the government. Not your friends. You are responsible for the person you become. And your 20s give you the space, the time, and the freedom to shape that person intentionally. This decade is where you learn self-respect by building discipline. Where you learn confidence by doing difficult things. Where you learn emotional strength by facing problems instead of avoiding them. Where you learn patience by working on long-term goals. Where you learn resilience by failing and rising again. Your 20s are the decade where life gives you a choice: build a foundation, or build excuses. And excuses feel harmless in your 20s until they become the prison of your 30s and 40s. The truth nobody told you is that the pain you feel in your 20s is not a punishment. It's preparation. The pressure, the confusion, the uncertainty, they are all shaping you. They are forcing you to grow. They are pushing you to evolve. They are teaching you how to stand on your own. Because later in life, you won't have the luxury of this much flexibility. You won't have the same time. You won't have the same energy. You won't have the same freedom. That's why your 20s matter. They are the decade of transformation. But transformation doesn't happen by accident. It happens by intention. It happens by commitment. It happens by choosing discipline over distraction. It happens by choosing growth over comfort. It happens by choosing your future over your feelings. Here is the truth most people avoid: if you want to separate yourself from the average, you must do what the average avoid. Wake up earlier. Work on yourself daily. Save money even when it's difficult. Learn skills even when no one is watching. Read books instead of scrolling endlessly. Take care of your body before it breaks down. Choose friends who push you, not keep you small. Say no to the things that drain you. Say yes to things that build you. Because the smallest decisions in your 20s become the biggest results or regrets later in life. Your 20s are also the decade where you must learn the power of saying enough. Enough to toxic people. Enough to procrastination. Enough to self-doubt. Enough to distractions. Enough to the narrative that being young means being careless. Enough to the belief that you'll figure it out later. Later doesn't exist. Only now does. You don't need perfection. You need progress. You don't need certainty. You need direction. You don't need everything figured out. You just need to build habits that lead you forward. Your 20s are the time to build yourself into someone who is prepared for responsibility, opportunity, pressure, obstacles, and success. And once you build that version of yourself, life becomes easier, not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. Here's the final truth nobody told you: your 20s are not about becoming successful. They're about becoming capable. Because once you become capable, success is inevitable. So if you're in your 20s now, or even if you feel behind, remember this: you are not late. You are not lost. You are not hopeless. You are simply at the beginning of your transformation. And everything you choose to do from this moment forward will shape the story you tell in 10 years. Don't waste this decade. Don't drift through it. Don't sleepwalk through your future. Use your 20s to build a life your future self will be proud of. Use your 20s to level up. Use your 20s to become extraordinary. Because the truth nobody told you is that your 20s are the most powerful decade of your life if you treat them that way.